Welcome to Peter and Roughie's Football Show. It is the 8th of October. We are sponsored by Arnold, Clarke. We're on weekdays, Monday to Friday. Alan Rough, Steven Naismith and Tam Cowan here with me. And as you can tell, there are two Patriots and apparently two people who just didn't bother their backside supporting Scotland today. I mean, what are we talking about here? We've got about 110 caps between us all. Surely with over 100 caps between us, we can all show everyone that we love our country. Anyway, Scotland against Israel. There's lots to look forward to. I'm patriotic. Stephen, what number is that strip? Is that number 49 or is that 52 or 54, that one you've got on?
I think this is 41, I think. Maybe 51, sorry. So, yeah. So just wearing it just in case I get a phone call, late call up, you know what I mean?
Well, and the real numbers that we need to know, Peter, the real numbers we need to know is 12 or 14. What birthdays were you two wee boys celebrating today with your nice new stats on? Is it your Scotland top while doing the shows and your Celtic top on Saltcoats Beach with the rest of them? Yeah.
I can't help it if you get strips if you're a fanatic, you know.
I've
got more than a
and is that what we need?
I've got my big Scotland Rossetti put on later. Oh, the big Rossetti. I've got my big Rossetti put on.
I just chose to wear a T-shirt kinda in the Scotland colours. It's a subtle touch for me. But I'm dying to know with Steven Naismith as a player, but ultimately first and foremost as a Scotland fan, is that a replica jersey? Or is that actually one of your real old ones, Stevie?
No, it's one of my real old ones for last year.
See, I thought that because there doesn't appear to be a bead of sweat on it. That's what my answer would have
been. I knew it was coming, but you could tell. I knew as soon as he asked you a question,
he's not happy.
Seems serious. It's not happy, right? Anyway, hi to Niall, hi to Alison, John as well. John Doherty, great to have you with us. There's lots of people joining us. Nicky Twig, George Urquhart, who says, "Come on, Scotland tonight." George is in Perth, and lots of people are talking about and wishing Scotland the very best. And Ronnie Porter says, "Roughie, what happened to Partick Thistle last night?" Don't worry, Ronnie, we'll get into the meat and bones of that as well. Scott Graham says, "Come on, Scotland. Afternoon, lads." Hi, Scott. Thank you very much for joining us. Marion, Martin, Lindsay, Brian and Robert as well, all joining us to say hello and get their thoughts on Scotland. Of course, we know we're 6 players down. We know that this game is hopefully one we can overcome Israel and then get ahead towards Norway or Serbia for this qualification for the tournament. It would be a long time waiting, but well worth it if we can somehow engineer our way to Euro 2020, which of course is played in 2021. Our reporter Gabriel Antoniazzi has a look at tonight's game.
Thanks, Peter. Since the country shut down 7 months ago, the world has changed in many ways, but the task facing Scotland has not. They take on Israel in the Euro 2020 playoff semi-final here at Hampden Park this evening. But it's bad news for Steve Clarke and his team. Stuart Armstrong, Ryan Christie and Kieran Tierney are all unavailable for the 3 upcoming matches. Armstrong has tested positive for coronavirus. He's been in close contact with the other 2. Here's what Clarke had to say when we caught up with him earlier.
Professional players know when they're taking part in a really big game. And since we came into this camp, there's been a little edge. So I know the players are ready. Obviously today will be a little dip or a little down for them, but by the time we kick off tomorrow night, they'll be ready for the game and the magnitude of the game. Don't worry about that.
3 more men, Scott McKenna, Liam Palmer and Ollie Burke, drop out with injury, so Stephen O'Donnell could come in at right back, whilst Lyndon Dykes is expected to lead the line again. Scotland are favourites, but Israel are no mugs and gave a good account of themselves in last month's 1-1 draw. The 3 meetings between the 2 sides in the last 2 years have produced a win each as well, and although Willie Rutensteiner's team have also been hit with COVID issues, as 4 players do miss out, they still have the firepower of Munoz de Boer and Erin Zahavi up top. Scotland captain Andy Robertson believes it will be a different game this time round.
Last month's will be different to this month's. Like I said, the added incentive of getting to a final to qualify for a major tournament is there, and I think you'll see two different teams tomorrow night. So we look forward to that challenge. We're more you know, we know more about the players than we probably did, you know, 9 months ago or whatever, before we started playing them pretty much every international break.
There will, of course, be no sellout crowd here at Hampden Park this evening, but the nation maintains hope that Scotland can make it to the playoff final next month against either Serbia or Norway, and then be just 90 minutes away from qualifying for the first major tournament in 23 years.
Absolutely crazy. Stevie, first and foremost, give us an insight into the mentality, because quite simply, quite a lot of us look at this situation and think to ourselves, well, you know, is the manager talking with a positivity? Does he do individual things to motivate certain players, or is it more about tactics in that dressing room and prior to it?
I think from the manager's point of view, he won't have changed much. He'll have made it much as any other camp has been. He's that type. He's very structured in what he does, and a lot of it will be tactically based. The kind of upset of the kind of COVID thing will have changed, obviously, personnel, I would have definitely said. But personally, from the player's point of view, with the three guys missing out, the boys who were sitting there thinking, I'm going to be on the bench, have now got this new lifeline, and it will create that extra buzz for them to potentially be involved tonight. So you hope that the guys coming in have got that buzz on top of the players that are playing to push on tonight and get us the result we need.
Yeah, Tam, are you filled with optimism?
Yeah, why not? I'm going to look in the positives here, Peter. We've got 3 players out with COVID, but as was reported there, Israel have got 4 out. So I think we need to just dry our eyes and get on with it. I'm sure Israel have had injuries as well. Israel, of course, who are below both Madagascar and Lebanon in the official FIFA rankings. So there really shouldn't be any excuses. I know they gave us a wee bit of a fright the last time we played them at Hampden, same way that Roughie gave me a bit of a fright there with that big loud cough. But well, they looked very tasty on the ball, particularly in the second half at Hampden. I think we've got to get on with it and get the one that will take us into that final, and to be a tantalising 90 minutes away, as Gabe says, for our first final in 23 years. And if you want another wee positive, Peter, the biggest debate, the biggest talking point since Stevie Clarke took over as Scotland manager was the how he fits Tierney and Robertson into the one team. Well, the bottom line is now that decision has been made for him, courtesy of COVID-19. Tierney can't play. Andy Robertson in the left-back position. There you go. Let's get on with it.
Yeah, and I would say a big hi to everyone who's watching us on YouTube. Niall was wondering and worrying whether our YouTube stream is on. It is indeed on. It's live across Facebook as well, and you can post some of your messages on how you think the game is going to go on our Facebook channel. Now, the point I was going to make here, just picking up on what Tam said there, Stephen, is I had 2 formations possibly that you guys can digest and discuss here, because we're obviously the closer it gets to kick off, we're wondering, is he going to go with a certain formation? Here's the possible lineups, and Stephen, you can have a stab at it first of all, and let us know what you think on these formations. It could be a 4-3-3, which obviously can go back into a 4-5-1 with Marshall, O'Donnell, Gallagher, Cooper and Robertson, Jack, McTominay, McGregor, McGinn, Dykes and Fraser, and those people can change in either flanks. That's a possible lineup there with the 2 central defenders. And then there's another potential one, which I'm going to offer to you, Stephen, and see if this floats your boat. Marshall, McTominay, Cooper and Porteous. And again, I would probably put Porteous in the middle or right, with Cooper, who's a left-sided centre-back. And then you've got Fraser, McGinn, Jack, McGregor and Robertson with Dykes and McBurney. Does that float your boat, Stephen? Is that accurate? Or do you think there's another permutation maybe in there?
I think before the boys dropped out, the 3 at the back was a real possibility, just because of the way he's done it over the last couple of trips. But I think with the boys I think he'll go back to the 4. The first formation you showed there is probably the most accurate, I would think. Fortunately, with Christie and Armstrong going out, that's probably the strongest area in the squad. So you've got adequate guys that potentially would come in. And as you had there, John McGinn further forward, I would agree. I think he might play in a midfield three of some sort, but he'll be the one closest to the striker. And Ryan Fraser is definitely going to play, I think, just with he's a guy with a natural pace and directness to get us up the park.
Yeah, and would you, I mean, Roughie's a McBurney fan. Are you a McBurney fan for this game?
I don't think for this game. I think Dykes will have kept his place. I think in the last two internationals, he showed that he's one up to the task of playing international football, but in two, he's on the same. If you watch the two games, he never tried to do anything over fancy. He didn't need to try and beat two or three men. He was doing what the target man is asked to do: is get it in and bring the three effectively behind you, or the four players behind you, into the game. And for me, I thought he done really well in that aspect last month. So I think he's the safest one because he's the one that's been in form for the national team in most recent times.
Yeah, but does he play with McBurney in a two?
No, not for me. I don't think. I think that's something that's in this magnitude of game where it's a one-off. I don't think the manager would be that adventurous and put two strikers on, two out-and-out strikers. I'd say he'd prefer more of a number 10 or guy that's going to drop into the pockets. Like I said there, John's probably the one that I would see doing that.
In a strange sort of way, Roughie, it's actually a game tailor-made for Stevie to be playing just off of Dykes.
Yeah, I think, as you know, I've been pretty positive all week. You know, I'm hoping that we'd play three at the back and two up front. You know, but obviously with the things that have happened, like Stevie, I think he's going to have to readdress the situation. I hope he doesn't go too negative attacking wise. I agree now that I don't think he'll play with two strikers. I don't think he can afford to. I'd be more positive once I see the team line, because sometimes managers come up with something right out of left field that we're not even talking about. Maybe it's something they've been working on. So I'm less confident than what I was, but once I see the team, I'm sure I'll be more encouraged. I still will like to have seen the two strikers playing, but I don't think that's going to be the case now, because I don't think we've got the personnel now to do two up front.
Is that where you've lost your confidence? Is it between 24 hours ago and now, yeah?
Yeah, I think so. I think we were all talking about three at the back, and we all knew who the three at the back was. We were going to have a strong, possibly five in midfield. And that might have been a case that home advantage, you know, the big boy Dykes, you know, being the kingpin up there, and McBurney just playing off him. And I thought with two strikers it would give us a better chance. I don't think we created that many chances in the last game at Hampden. Balls into the box for Dykes, and I just thought somebody up there with him. If we're going to have somebody in the flanks getting forward, whether it's Fraser and Robertson and firing balls into the box, I think you've just got a better chance with two strikers coming in on the end of it than one. But let's wait and see what he comes up with. You know, I still think we're good enough to win, but I had 2 or 3-0 at the beginning of the week, but I'm not as confident at that scoreline now.
Yeah, it's strange, Tam, but you know what we're like as a nation? If he plays one up, and as Steven says, you know, somebody just close to him, but not quite as a two, you know, managers get it in the neck because they're not being positive about it. But, you know, we've had a little test run against Israel, and I, for one, I'm certainly not in any way underestimating them, because if anything, they've got players who are playing in top drawer clubs across Europe.
Yeah, I'm absolutely not underestimating them, Peter. And you know that I like a wee flutter. I've already looked and seen that Israel, you can get them roughly around about 5-2 your money tonight. And I certainly saw enough of them in that second half at Hampden several weeks ago to think that might be a decent wee wager. Caught an insurance policy. If you put a couple of quid on Israel tonight and Scotland win, you're delighted. If Israel win, at least you've got a couple of quid to cheer you up. But I'll tell you what, Peter, talking about when you're analysing who may or may not be in that team tonight, I'm going to chuck one in for left field here and say that I wish Stevie Clarke had been marry a Maverick and he'd had the cojones to put Lee Griffiths straight into that squad tonight. Because I think he's the boy that must be absolutely buzzing now with that quite dramatic comeback for Celtic at McDermott Park last weekend. And in the same way that he came on as a late sub against St Johnstone and scored the goal that ultimately bagged the 3 points for Celtic, even maybe drafting him in tonight, and if it's 0-0 and we're getting to the 70, 75 minute mark, I think you'd have been confident in Lee Griffiths going on there and popping out of nowhere and scoring the winner for Scotland. So I mean that most sincerely. It might sound crazy to some people. It might sound crazy to, veteran professionals like Steven Naismith and Alan Rough, but I think it'd have been worth a throw of the dice.
Well, the only thing that goes against that, and Stephen, you'll probably be better placed than most to answer what Tam's suggesting, is there are 4 or 5 different caveats to that make the manager's mind up. One is the manager will speak to Neil Lennon. The manager will speak to the player. The manager will look at it and say, okay, how desperate are we? Do we need him? Can we bring him in at late notice to suddenly play in a game? I think he would have had to have done it a few days ago to do it, but I understand where Tam's coming from. We're looking for goals from anywhere.
Hang on, I'm also going down that particular line because maybe Stevie can give me the answer to this, but how many subs are you allowed now in modern international football? You always get a busload of them sitting on the bench, so surely he could have been chucked in there, and he might just, I'm guessing, Stevie will know Lee Griffiths a lot better than me, but I'm guessing he's a sort of player who thrives on that sort of impact that he made in the game against St Johnstone. He must be absolutely buzzing now. And the very thought of him being the hero for Celtic and Scotland within the space of a week, I think that's right up his street.
I agree with what Tam's saying there, that Griff will be buzzing. He will. Yeah, I wouldn't be surprised now in the next month if he goes on and scores at least one every game he plays in. But the initial squad would have been announced and picked before that, and the games at the weekend for him to contribute. So at that moment in time, Steve Clarke's looking at the squad. Griff's not featured, so he's probably not even in his thoughts. And then these call-offs have happened that late in the day that I'm not so sure that you would be able to call a player in to be tested for COVID before to be eligible to play in the game tonight. I think they would have had to
You're absolutely right, Stephen. That's why Ross McCrory's been called up, but he's only available for Slovakia and the Czech Republic. So it would have had
because there's a period for that
yeah.
COVID test. That COVID test, you need to wait the 24 hours. And that's probably why. But I agree with Tam that he would have been somebody who would be valuable at this moment in time, certainly to come on off the bench to have an impact.
Yeah, and to be fair, Roughie, I'm surprised they haven't actually. I mean, I know you have to speak to the manager of the club and then get an assessment of it. But if I was Steve Clarke, I'd be phoning, as Tam says, and say, if we get past Israel, do us a turn here. He might come up with a wee bit of magic. Can you imagine with 2 minutes to go, Roughie, against Norway? Obviously, we're all thinking it won't be 0-0 because Haaland will be on a hat-trick by this time. But if it was 0-0, Roughie, can you imagine throwing his number up as a substitute for a free kick with 20 yards out? It would be unbelievable.
Yeah, it'd be fantastic. I mean, I don't believe for a minute he is up to 100%, to play 90 minutes, but the thought of him actually coming on, we've got a free kick at the edge of the box and the bold Griff turns up and curls it into the top of the net. I wouldn't put that past him. That's the kind of things that he does, but I'd have thought that they would maybe trying some, for the future games, some leeway, because there must be some COVID restrictions that you can maybe wiggle your way around and maybe tamper with the rules a wee bit. So because all the teams are going to get hit like this, so maybe somewhere down the line we might find a loophole that the other games coming up that we can bring them in.
Yeah, well, only time will tell. As far as tonight is concerned, Tam, right to point out as well that this is an Israel side who've got players out, but they still have quality. They can still cause us problems. It'll be an eerie silence for a qualifying game, for a game that means quite a lot, but we just have to get on with it. Is there any advantage? You can give us your thoughts on that as well. The one thing I would say, quite a few people are mentioning it on Facebook, why is there no chat on YouTube? Well, we've called a halt to it at the moment on YouTube, just basically because there are a lot of faceless and nameless people on there who are posting a lot of bile, and we're getting a lot of complaints from people who've got no interest in football and just want to post either bigoted stuff or stuff in abuse that really beggars belief. So we've tried to promote, and we do promote on a regular basis, that we are football fans and we want to talk about football, but people on Facebook are linked to their own account and they are traceable, and if they want to behave like morons, we can ban them and we can report them. YouTube is just, it can be a cesspit to allow people to just post things which are deplorable. So we're hoping the people who watch us on YouTube are football fans, and they will subscribe to our channel based on what we're chatting about, and also like, share and follow us on PLZ Soccer as well. Next week, I can tell you, next week you've got something to really look forward to, because what we're going to do is we're going to give away an Apple iPad, we're going to give away a series of our Legends t-shirts, and we're going to give away some framed Legends as well, all in one package next week. So it's a super competition for you to get involved in. So with that in mind, don't forget to stick with us here on PLZ Soccer on the Football Show, and you could be a big winner. Just on that point that I was talking about decency, Roughie, I don't know who did it, and I'm not for a minute suggesting it was a group aligned to any sort of club, but the people who defaced Firhill with the bit about Palestine and throwing paint all over Firhill at the front of the stadium. I mean, there's no need for that either.
No, and I hope it's not anything that's going to tarnish the game tonight as well. There's obviously people out there with their own political ideas. I think we would all agree on this show that political stuff should stay political. Football's football. We get on with it. You know, and we try to do our best, but as we know, there are people out there that just do these things, and I think that they just bring the whole thing down to a horrible, horrible level. But we'll get on with it, and I just hope there's nothing tonight that spoils the game.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I mean, listen, at times politics and sport do mix, Tam. You can't get away from it. But if people want to make a political complaint outside the stadium, I'm sure they'll be dealt with tonight by the police, because, you know, nobody should be going near the stadium. Certainly nobody should be congregating and breaking the social distancing rules as well. And I am not in any way discussing the rights or wrongs of anybody's political viewpoint.
Yeah, because when you mix football and politics, it does cause nothing but bother. And I get caught up in that myself last week, Peter. I think you'll remember in last week's show, I brought to the programme the possibility of tonight's game going to extra time and penalties, and the penalties maybe starting at 10:05, and the scenario of Scotland fans sitting in the pubs, which are meant to close at 10, and all sorts of carnage breaking out when the publicans are asking the Scotland fans to leave the premises before they're able to watch Scotland in a penalty shootout of the semi-final of a competition, you know. And when we put that to Professor Jason Leach last week on the radio, he basically slapped me down by way of a very pithy line. He just said to me when I put this proposal to him, Jason Leach said to me, "Okay, Tam, I'll have a word with the guys and get it sorted," right? And he was basically saying, "Tam, there's a global pandemic. Shut up. If the pubs close at 10, they close at 10. A penalty shootout does not matter." But because Jason Leach said in his very dry manner about "I'll have a word with the guys, Tam," he was so dry, so sarcastic, that some people actually picked up on what he was saying as gospel, including some MSPs, respected guys in the media, who went on Twitter and absolutely slammed him for trying to get the pubs extended for a football game. So, you know, politics and football, they should never ever mix.
Well, absolutely. It's very difficult, because remember, the longer we're locked up, Roughie, people are hanging on every word. And remember, you've got what we call now, there is a profession that's actually developed in the 21st century, Roughie, which I wasn't aware I wasn't aware of, but it's certainly gathered paces. There are people who actually have a career now being professionally offended. And they wait for one little slip. If it's a word, if it's a political view or anything, they're all over it like a rash. It's just part of that Naismith snowflake generation. It's as simple as that, Roughie.
Yeah. I mean, Tam, I think Tam will be aware of this more than us, because obviously Tam is on that borderline sometimes with some of the stuff that comes out in this show. If he gets his no way BBC anymore. But no, and Tam's is, Tam, as we all know, is why do you have to be offended? Is that not right, Tam?
Absolutely. I think if I ever see anything on the telly that so-called offends me, Peter, I switch channels. I don't bother going to my writing bureau, getting out my fountain pen and writing a strongly worded letter to Ofcom or ITV or the BBC. You've got a remote control in your hand, and every day has always got that option. But back in Roughie's day, it was easier times because you think, look at how we've been ravaged with this COVID. One player had it, another two have got to miss out. Back in the good old days when Roughie was at a World Cup, if all the times that he would have tested positive for gonorrhea, I don't think any of his teammates in the Scotland squad that shared the room with him ever had to miss out. The rest of them were able to get on with it. It was innocent times, Peter, and I long to be able to get back to those days.
Yeah, absolutely. And I'm not sure that I don't want to dwell on that disease, but I'm not sure that affects your ability to save a free kick from Kubias or Zico. I might be wrong, but I don't want to get into it. Anyway, Ian Williamson.
Steven Naismith's wondering there. He thought the Benetti brothers signed gonorrhea for Dundee.
I did actually think he was a Peruvian right back, but nevertheless, it's a good line, Tam. Ian Williamson says, rumour has it. Now, this is gathering a bit of pace because over the last couple of days, a couple of people have thrown it in there. Rumour has it, Ryan Jack at right back tonight. It's a strange one, Stevie, because I think Ryan Jack is, for me, a midfielder, good, industrious midfielder. If Ryan Jack was getting in at right back, that would be a slap in the face for Stephen O'Donnell, who's there, who's played before. Like him or lump him, some people he think he's not good enough. Stevie gives his all. He's so delighted to play for Scotland. Palmer's out, so he's the only option.
Yep. I would say, for me, Jacko is one. It's got to be Jacko and McGregor centre mid for me. I think their partnership they've shown is the most fluid. They understand each other. They've built up a good relationship. The two of them kind of sitting as a two. I'm not so sure I could see Jacko going back to right back. Like you say, it would be a slap in the face to Stephen O'Donnell, but more for the fact that Jacko and Callum McGregor have built up a good reputation in there and a good relationship. So I think I would have him in the centre of mid before even considering right back.
Yeah, and the other thing about it as well, Roughie, that I like, I like McGregor because I think he's neat and tidy, but he also puts in a shift. I am warming more and more to Ryan Jack over the last couple of years because he also grafts away, and you know what you're getting with John McGinn.
Yeah, I'm also a great believer in you play players in the position that's their strength. Yeah, they can do something somewhere else, but why take them out of their good zone, and put them somewhere good psychologically? They might be a wee bit, well, this isn't when I play, I'll just have to try and do my best here. I would rather have it, no, I'm in my best position. I know what I'm doing. I know the strengths that I've got in this position and take it for there. So, but I know that the reason at the beginning of the show said that I think the manager will come up with something. I think the manager will come up with something left field that a lot of us won't expect. He did it with McTominay when he put him in at centre half, and none of us thought that was going to happen. So I'll wait and see the team lines tonight, but I'm sure and I hope he's going to be positive in an attacking aspect to this game, because I do think we've got players in there going forward that can hurt this team.
Yeah, well, to be fair, he did say that he wouldn't rule out McTominay going at centre-back at some time in the future as well. Whether that's tonight or not, I don't know. Just out of curiosity, I'm not for a minute suggesting that you in any way go against anyone's confidence. Stephen, have you had a sniff of the team? I might as well ask you.
No, I've not. For me, I think it's always that awkward conversation to have when you're speaking to some of the players, is them wanting to give the team out. But the manager as well won't have. Yes, they might have shaped up, but again, with the three boys dropping out, I'd say at least two of them would have been starting this game tonight. So things will have changed in the past 24 hours. So I'm not sure many people will know the team if the manager's even told the boys it yet. Sometimes he leaves it to just before leaving to go to the stadium.
Yeah,
but Peter, Stevie hasn't given up on a late call up, because what the viewers can't see is that as well as the Scotland top, he's also got the shorts, the socks, and the boots on right just now, and the taxi is on standby for Stewarton right up to Hampden.
Sure,
don't rule it out just yet.
Yeah, absolutely. Listen, Dougie Liddell has said Peter fishing. Dougie, it would be remiss of me not to ask that sort of question to him, because every now and then players say to each other, how's it looking, how's it lining up, who's injured, who's not. That's what they do, they talk. Players are a bunch of sweetie wives, let me tell you. They all have a wee natter with each other, and a moan as well. That's the one great thing about the last 30 years. They'll have a wee moan about certain things, if they're playing, if they're not. I have to say, I wish you did have the shorts on and the studs and all that ready, because this game for me, I mean, you're not itching, Stevie. This game is just made for you.
To be honest, it's been something. The last 18 months, this has been. It's funny because this has been the game that I've put my full kind of international career on for. I've been driving to get in the squads to make this game. But the way it's played out and with the game getting moved, I've obviously not made it. But it's one of those things. So hope the boys get through and work hard in the next month to potentially make the squad for next month. But the main thing is we get through, which I'm confident we will.
I think
Peter, a bit of breaking news. I was saying there that Stevie could maybe be waiting in a Stewarton taxi. I just got a text there from one of my pals. That's not going to happen. The Stewarton taxi is at the vets. So there we go.
Right, okay. That joke is going to have to be explained to me at some point. It's gone right over my head. I'm sure it's going to come to me at some point. Anyway, apart from anything else, that's the one thing I would say to you is, if you play 17 friendlies against Partick Thistle, the international manager just eventually gets scunnered with you and doesn't want to play you. I think you can blame it all on Roughie, to be honest with you, Stevie. You know, that whole WhatsApp group, all that skullduggery, the booting hearts consistently has gone against you. Although I would ask you one thing, you haven't given up on Scotland, though. You would hope maybe that something could still be there.
No, I've definitely not given up. While I'm still playing and think I can contribute, I'll fight my case. But Big Dykes has come in and he's effectively pole position and now ahead of Ollie. Ollie Burks had a move in the summer, so Griff's coming back into it. So as players, you need to work hard. Like myself, sitting here hoping that I can maybe make a squad in the future. Griff will be sitting thinking, right, I've had a good impact in the game. I'm going to kick on now and make the next squad as well. So that's the way it is. As a player, all you can do is play as well as you can, and hopefully that makes the manager's mind up to put you in the squad, really. So just, as always, play on.
I love your attitude to it. That should be something, Tam, that many a footballer should have the same attitude. If you want to learn off somebody, it's just come over the last 30 seconds.
Absolutely. But, you know, I don't think we should be scrabbling about the now. As nice I thought as it is to get Stevie back into the team and stuff, we just need to have our confidence in the guys that are picked tonight. And I'm just hoping. I do think, Peter, at the Tartan Army is going to be a huge loss. I know that statistically, the way results have been, it would suggest that empty stadia hasn't had too much of a bearing on the results. You could argue that the biggest shock result still this season was the one this midweek when the Annan Athletic for the bottom tier knocked out Hamilton Accies, top flight club in the Betfred Cup. But then you could immediately come back at me perhaps with that and say that was actually the third time in the bounce that Annan had ejected Accies from a cup competition. So maybe that wasn't even such a shock. So, but even then, I do still think that could have been the classic 12th man the night if we could have had Hampden. It would have been bursting at the seams the night, Peter. How many times have we been in this scenario where we're 180 minutes away from a major tournament after being starved for 20 odd years? Hampden would have been absolutely heaving tonight, and I do reckon it could have been worth a goalie a start to Scotland.
Yeah, I want to thank Henry Lally, who, and I'm great, I'm usually sharp as a tack, as Roughie will tell you, and Tam, I'm on every joke, and even the ones that Tam rat-a-tat-tat out in the after-dinner circuit. But thanks to Henry Lally, who says, Peter, the taxi in Stewarton is at the blacksmith's. It's getting fitted with new shoes. So suddenly I feel like McFly out of Back to the Future. But anyway,
fair play to Henry. Peter, I should have said maybe blacksmith instead of vet. I thought vet was enough for you. I didn't need to join the dots too much, but that's fine. It was just a bit of casual geographical xenophobia aimed towards North Ayrshire.
It's one of these after dinner
East Ayrshire, Tam. No, North Ayrshire.
It's one of these ones. It's one of these ones when you're out with Tam at a dinner and he cracks a joke, you don't get it, and you just laugh anyway.
Yeah.
And worry about it later on.
I can't believe I didn't get it. Anyway, apart from anything else, I love the fact that, I don't know if you picked up on it, Tam, but I love the fact that Stevie suddenly got tribalistic on East and North Ayrshire. I didn't know there was a
Good on him. Good on him, Peter. I don't know if you've done this, Peter. I once made the mistake in the company live in a show with Big Yogi Hughes, all 6 feet 10 of them, all 22 stone of them, and I casually made out that Leith was just the same as Edinburgh. If looks could kill, I'll never make that mistake again. So I apologise to Steven Naismith for mixing up East Ayrshire with Beirut.
It's I have to say, it's the cardinal sin. It was my first flat in Edinburgh. Roughie was in Great Junction Street in Leith, and honestly, the Leith people just do not see themselves as Edinburgh people. There's a different mentality down there. I loved it. I thought it was a great place to live.
Yeah, obviously, in that side of the town, obviously you're favouring one side rather than the other. But no, it's a great social place to be. Lots of good places to go as well, as you probably found out.
Yeah, it is absolutely fantastic down there. Didn't go down to the docks where you were most of the time, Roughie, but other than that, I can tell you that lots of people are quite nice on Facebook with their messages, and this one says, let's be honest, too many people are in front of Naismith now for the call-up, and that comes from Mrs. Griffiths. So quite a lot of people just throwing in messages there. Just so.
Which one? Which one?
I'll throw them up for you. You just bat them in, Tom. Oh dear. The other thing here is this is the one thing that annoyed me about the whole thing with the guys being taken out of the fray. Apparently they were all playing PlayStation, but they said they were 2 meters apart. This is how we lost. Tierney, Ryan Christie, and obviously Stuart Armstrong as well. Stuart being the man who tested positive, playing a bit of PlayStation, and suddenly there's no way back for them, Tam.
Yeah, some things never change. I remember reading in Asa Hartford's book that in 1978 he burst into Roughie's hotel room and he was sitting there with his joystick in his hand. So, you move it on. You move it on. You move it on. You move it on 42 years. Some things stay the same. That's actually quite refreshing.
Were any of his teammates in the room?
Exactly. If I had a joystick in my hand, the whole squad would have been through the door.
Oh, dearie me. Ronnie, I apologise to you. Every now and then, Tam comes out with one that just catches us all. Now, the other thing I was going to say to you guys, predictions. Tam, how do you see it?
All joking aside, Peter, about the pub scenario and the penalty shootout, I just dread that outcome. Just for the nation at large, there's too much going on there. So I'm going to dismiss any thoughts of that, and I think we'll win 1-0. And don't ask me why, but I've got Callum McGregor in mind for scoring the winner around about the 65th minute. 1-0 Scotland.
Wow, I didn't think you were going to be that precise. I'm with Tam on this. I think 1-0. Stevie?
I think 2-0. I think the first half will be very cagey. Both teams want to kind of stay in the game, but I think on the whole we'll get one, and with them pushing on, we'll score a second late on.
Oh, that would be great. I like an early one, Roughie. It always settles the nerves. How do you see
Well,
it?
as you know, at the beginning of the week, I was 2-3-0 because I did think our squad was much better than them, and that was the case. But obviously, in light of what's happening, I'm going to settle for, we'll be 2-0 up. They'll score with 5 minutes to go, 2-1, and we'll all be behind the couch for the last 5 minutes plus extra time. But I still think we'll go through 2-1.
Yeah, it's funny you saying that, because I'm going to read out a few names of people who are giving their opinion on this. Stuart Ramsey says 2-1 Scotland, please. And also penalties, says Eddie Snedden. So that's an interesting one. If it was penalties, that would be nervy. And also Hugh Scott says 2-1 Scotland. Henry Lally agrees. Edward Wilson says 2-0. Ian Noble is 3-1 Scotland. And Alison's very optimistic. She says 3-0 Scotland. I hope you're right, Alison. Niall Kane says 3-1. And over and above that, I think the general feeling is I don't get too many people suggesting. Stephen McCready says 5-1 Scotland. Stephen, I think there'll be a few people absolutely rolling out the red wine if they get to 3 or 4 or 5-1 against Israel, to be perfectly honest with you. And Andy Phillips, Scotland 4-3 win. That's what you call the nervy one. Listen, there's a wee bit of news coming in, and I just want to try and read it out because, as ever, we're never too far away from some bit of news that sneaks into our thoughts. And this one is just coming in. Scotland's under-19s match with England has been abandoned this afternoon due to a positive COVID-19 test being found during the game. The first half of the friendly was nearly played out, with the referee called a halt to proceedings on the 43rd minute with England 3-1 up, according to journalist Mike McGrath. Players were told that a member of the backroom team on one of the sides tested positive, leading to the cancellation of the game. Now, I have to say, that is outrageous, Roughie.
Yeah, I can't get my head around that one at all. Obviously, we'll have to get more detail how that happened, but before the game, if you all get tested and you're all negative, then I mean, I don't understand. You know, a lot of the protocols. You know, that's why you've got Celtic and you've got Arsenal. You know, asking the government for more protocol and what happens in the definitive. But that one seems absolutely bizarre that the games actually went ahead, because I presume that all the players have been tested before the game started. But to cancel it, you know, during it just seems utterly bizarre.
Yeah, Stevie, can you imagine it? Scotland 2-1 up, you know, 30 minutes to go in the second half, and everybody getting called over to the side. Game's a bogey. We've just found out the physio's picked up COVID.
Mental. But again, like Roughie said there must have been a breakdown in the protocol of it all, because the way the testing works, the results would be back before the game kicked off. That's the whole point and process with it. So something's went wrong there.
Doesn't half. Anyway, apart from anything else,
Peter, I don't want to be the doom monger here, but whereas this seems a wee bit crazy, a wee bit barmy, and almost a wee bit funny for something like this to happen, I'll remind you that Nicola Sturgeon said that she was shown football the yellow card a while back now. So if even incidents like this keep kind of adding up, we might find ourselves in a position where the red card is shown, because obviously the other night as well, there was a late cancellation forfeit against Dundee. We obviously had the situation at Kilmarnock, which meant they forfeited the game against Falkirk. So while we think, wow, isn't this absolutely amazing? It's almost quite quirky. It's something to look back on when we're all old and decrepit. But the bottom line is the charge sheet is adding up. And if we can't behave, if we can't do the testing properly, if games are being abandoned now, then you wonder when the First Minister is going to reach into her top pocket for that red card.
Yeah, absolutely. And again, this situation is grave on the basis of the implications financially for clubs is growing dire by the day. And with that in mind, I was speaking to Des McKeown, who used to be our weekend reporter. We sent Des out, and we'll be hearing from him very shortly. He followed the Morton Queen of the South game for us the other night there, and also he paid in to see a few games just to get a feel of what's happening in the lower leagues and how they're approaching this season. So we'll hear from Des very shortly, just on the basis of everybody trying to follow the rules and trying to, follow the protocol, Stephen. We're now in a situation where, undoubtedly Arsenal, Manchester City game rules Kieran Tierney out. Ryan Christie out of the Old Firm game. Real suggestion now that there's no chance that Odsonne Edouard's going to be available for the Old Firm game. But Celtic are obviously going to try and check all these rules and try and, in some way, not so much look for a loophole, but plead the case on players being available because they've tested negative. I mean, you really would need to be a lawyer to follow this day by day, how the rules change, how people are ruled out, how people who are testing positive for it have got 10 days, people who are in close consultation or in close proximity, they are 14 days. It's constantly changing. It's so difficult to follow.
It is, and I think for players it's really hard to follow. But I think certainly at Hearts they've kind of tried to make it as blank a canvas as like, this is what we do. We go into training, we do our bit, we go home, we don't go in any situations that really will compromise that, because like you said, what happens if you have a positive test come back are extreme for a player in terms of the football calendar, especially at this time of year. You're going to miss 3 or 4 games. So it is very tricky to follow. And it's constantly changing. That's the thing as well, that 1 week, for instance, there was a thing where you were only allowed a certain amount of players, or if you were training on half a pitch, and then if you were on a full pitch, it was up to 20 players or something. But then that changed, that then you could train on half a pitch with all your players, and week to week the rules literally change, which for us as players it can be tricky to follow.
Callum Reynolds, I think, makes a great point on this.
Peter,
he says it's ridiculous. Yeah.
Sorry, Peter, you're saying there you need to be a lawyer to understand this. You don't. You maybe need to be a scientist to understand this, and that's why we do have so many scientists on the case. Listen to these guys. These guys know what they're talking about. There has been quite rightly a backlash against people in the media who suddenly think they are experts on a pandemic and suddenly think that they have spent 7, 8, 9 years at university studying this stuff. They haven't. They played football, or they get involved in newspapers and radio and TV stations. Leave it to the scientists to tell us what's going on. And the point that Stevie's making about how if a player tests positive, the bottom line is that the scientists and the government, quite rightly, couldn't give 2 figs if a player then has to miss out in a game or 2, or if he has to self-isolate. The minute a player tests positive, the only thing that should matter is that that player then doesn't go and make contact with perhaps an elderly relative or a relative with underlying health issues and allows the virus to spread. That's all that matters here. Football in the grand scheme of things actually isn't that important.
No, you're absolutely right, 100%. That's not the point I was looking at, though, Tam. I accept that the scientists then give the medical advice to the government, and then the government slowly but surely implement rules. Then they implement laws which govern the nation, Tam. My point is, it then becomes a situation where you almost have to have a lawyer to interpret what the laws are on this, because slowly but surely things are changed in each region. Rules are in place. We accept that from the scientists, which say if you are tested, you're out of, you've got to go into self-isolation, and anybody that's been in close proximity to you through this tracing app will be informed of it. I absolutely get that, Tam. I get the medical aspect of it, but I'm just saying the interpretation of the laws that are in place now and how Celtic will look and say to themselves, is there, in their minds, mitigating circumstances? And what I was about to read out was Callum Reynolds says, it's ridiculous if Ryan Christie gets to play in the Old Firm game when Gogic has a false positive and missed games. So, you know, what I'm saying is I'm not going to argue with the medical advice. I'm certainly not in any way suggesting that any of us are not aware of what we have to do. But sometimes once the laws come in and the changing rules on a day-to-day and a week-to-week basis come in different regions, you would almost need a Philadelphia lawyer, as my mum used to say, just to see how the whole thing's changed day by day. And I am looking at so many people here talking about different situations, permutations that clubs will try and go through here to get players to play in an Old Firm game. But realistically, I think Christie's out. I think Edward hasn't got a catch chance in hell of playing in that Old Firm game. Roughie, I might be wrong. Something might come up, but I think those two are out of it as far as Neil Lennon is concerned.
Well, this precise moment, it looks as if they are out of it, you know, unless Celtic and Arsenal can find loopholes for their players to play in these games. But I think you're right, you know, we did it before when we all thought, well, we didn't think we were lawyers, but lawyers and solicitors, and now we're specialists in pandemics. You know, I think we should, Tam said, we should just leave it to the people who specialise in it. And I know we won't, a lot of us won't understand it. I'll be scratching my head at some of the decisions. I mean, that one you've just started this off with, the game being abandoned, is just mind-blowing, you know, from that aspect. And I'm sure we'll hear more and more about that.
Yeah, absolutely. The arguments will rage on. Listen, even Rangers have problems trying to get players back fit. Helander was a problem, came out of the Swedish squad. I'm looking now that Borna Barisic out of the Croatian squad in a race to be trying to be fit for this game as well. And Connor Golson struggling with a knock. I don't know if you're aware of it, Tam, but the closer you have your microphone to your nose every time you sniff, when somebody's walking in the podcast, they jump in Strathclyde Park and think there's somebody close behind them. Just thought I'd enlighten you on that. Anyway, apart from anything else,
well, if I might actually have signed up with my sinuses, but instead of going to the doctor, I'm just going to ask Willie Miller what to do with it next time I'm on the BBC.
Yes. Now, before you go, stick with us, because there's a couple of things I want to get your guys' thoughts on. We've given our predictions on what we think the game's going to be. What about the health? We're talking about health here. What about the health of the lower leagues? Because the longer this goes on now, there is a real growing fear that some clubs could fold. We're struggling for cash. We sent Des McKeown out there to Morton against Queen of the South, and he's been in a few other lower league games for us, just to get a feel from chairmen, from chief executives, from club owners about the state financially they're in and what they're facing. And I caught up with Des earlier just to get his thoughts on it. Des, thanks for joining us. We sent you out there to Morton against Queen of the South in the League Cup, just to get a flavour of how the lower league teams are finding this lockdown, no fans in, and coping financially and, of course, on the park.
Yeah, it was an interesting evening, Peter, and tinged with sadness, the fact that unfortunately there were no fans in the ground. Same experience driving into Sinclair Street up to the car park and looking down on the pitch, watching the boys doing the warm-up with the floodlights on. It was proper football time, but then obviously the protocols for the COVID clearance side of things, different entrance for the press and the media, And once you get into the ground, you know, there was it was a strange atmosphere, very eerie. You could hear every word from the pitch. There was nothing around you. And once the game commenced, you know, it was kind of surreal atmosphere.
I know you'll be speaking to more than a few people from the lower leagues. You've got a football agency as well. You deal with a lot of players and managers. How difficult, first of all, has it been in an agency basis when you try and get players other clubs, and you also have players that you want to try and get on extended contracts in this current climate?
Yeah, it's difficult, Peter. You know, the amount of contracts that are available has greatly reduced. Clubs are obviously having to cut their cloth accordingly. So the money that was perhaps being offered 2 years ago within the Premiership and the Championship, even League One, League Two, is different now. Clubs are running with much tighter squads. There's less development type projects with younger players. In fact, development football is all but gone, sadly, and there are a number of very talented young players who ordinarily would have been retained by their parent club and given a new contract. Sadly, because there's no development football, no reserve league, the clubs have got nowhere to play them. And as a result, you know, some of the younger talented players have paid the price for the coronavirus and the pandemic. And as a result, you know, some will be lost to the game, some will be resilient, some will bounce back, some will take, you know, 2 steps backwards to try and get 3 forwards and then kick on again. But it's been really tough times for a lot of the younger players.
Has it been difficult for you to advise some of the younger players that maybe, as the Chancellor of the Exchequer has suggested, people have to find an alternative career? That must be a hard one to take.
Yeah, it is, Peter. And, you know, there are many of the young boys that have, you know, devoted so much time and effort to their careers. You know, many of these kids have been in the systems at their clubs for 7, 8, maybe even up to 10 years. You know, they've denied themselves many things, they've made sacrifices, and out with their control, you know, they find themselves, you know, potentially on the scrap heap or having to rebuild their careers by perhaps, you know, dropping down to League Two or League One and trying to get first team minutes to then be seen again, so that when things return, and hopefully things will return to a better footing financially for Scottish football and across, you know, into English football as well, that these young players will reappear. But it will be a real test of their resilience, their belief and their confidence in themselves. And obviously for the ones that I'm advising, I'm trying to explain to them that, you know, this is a setback that nobody could have predicted 12 months ago, but we need to deal with it. We need to take it head on and stay focused on what you do best, work on the elements that you need to, make sure that you're fit, so that if you do get the chance, you take it.
Yeah, and just finally, Des, I mean, I know we sent you out there to watch Morton. They're a well-run club. There are a few clubs that will be able to get through this. You were our man in the Championship, League One and League Two, when we did the programmes on a Saturday afternoon. Is there a fear in your mind that some clubs could fold if this continues? And if that is the case, how quickly or how near the edge of the cliff do you think they are right now?
It's a hell of a question, Peter, but I think it's very pertinent, and I think it is pertinent because my understanding, having spoken to a large number of directors and chairmen at football clubs and technical directors, sporting directors, whoever it may place, with a view that fans would be returning very late as January. So I firmly believe that the effects of COVID on Scottish football probably won't be seen until next summer. I think this summer's been a really tough one because people have had to pull a budget from really nowhere. I think as the season develops, I think many clubs will have over budgeted, given that, you know, fans perhaps won't be in as soon as they thought they would be, and as a result, I think it's going to be tough times for a number of clubs. And sadly, I do expect, you know, certainly at least 1 or 2 clubs to really struggle to maintain their business.
Can't let you go without the old Scotland. No, it's close to your heart. No, you watch international football. All the guys who are on the show have to give a prediction. So give us your thoughts on this one against Israel.
I think it's a tough one, Peter, obviously. But I think Stevie Clarke will galvanise the team. Obviously, he's had a couple of setbacks and the build up to this, but I'm sticking with them, and I think Scotland will be victorious tonight.
Okay, if they do win, then we'll come back to you tomorrow, Des, because I notice Frank Sinatra's in the background there, so we'll get you to sing That's Life. but until then, hang fire, don't turn the mic on just yet, and I'll speak to you soon.
Thanks, Peter, all the best.
Yeah, he's good at that, Tam. He can sing That's Life really, really well.
Yeah, he's good. He's still up my screen. Peter Desert. Oh, sorry, Stevie. But I've heard. I thought it was a technical glitch. No, I've heard Des singing. He can hold a tune. He's no bad at all.
Yeah, absolutely. So listen, on that basis, just before we go, I've got to get your thoughts on this. I looked at it today and I thought, woof, there's one for the guys to give us their final comment on. We're all confident that Scotland can maybe at least sneak it. Thanks to everyone who's put their own predictions up on this. Arsene Wenger revealed, this came up on ESPN, he revealed that FIFA are considering radical changes to the laws of football, which could, wait for it, Roughie, see throw-ins replaced with kicking it in, players taking free kicks to themselves, quickly obviously, and an in-swinging corner that goes out of play, if it comes back in, it could still be valid. These are just a number of things that they're looking at. Do you think there needs to be radical changes to the laws?
No, I don't. But these are things that they tried to bring in for the World Cup in America. I know that was one of the reasons everybody was hesitating before we gave it to America, because they were going to come up with some of these ideas that you've just mentioned there. No, I think some of them, the ball going out the park and come back in is just a joke, for me. But I think the kick in instead of a throw in is worthwhile looking at. But the other ones, no, I can't get my head around them.
Yeah. Stevie, would you like to see any particular changes in the game that would change it for the better?
I don't think it needs it. I'm really Roughie here. You don't need too much change. It's a fantastic sport as it is, but every year they'll constantly go round and round, try to refine the game to make it better. But the ones you've suggested there, I'm not so sure they make a massive difference in terms of how entertaining the game will be. So I can't imagine they'll come into play anytime soon.
Yeah, forgive me for this, Stephen, and it's against your profession. The only thing I would bring in is Roughie knows I would stop the clock as soon as the ball's out of play, because that would stop you lot cheating. Because you know what you're like. You like to roll over. You like to think you've got a real big problem in your knee with a minute to go when you're winning 1-0, and
actually,
then you get
just
up
on that,
and suddenly you're amazed.
What I would like is the game not to finish till the last attack's out of play. That's one kind of like rugby. I think it's something that, like you say, the team time wasting happens, but if the attack never ends till the game ball's out of play.
That's a good one, Tam. I like that.
Yeah, my own thoughts on that in terms of the corner kick that is out of play and comes back in. As somebody, Peter, who for 40 plus years has had a season ticket which has effectively helped pay the wages of so-called professional footballers, I think first and foremost, any player who hits a corner that goes out of the pitch should be dropped and fined 2 weeks' wages. It's one of the most ridiculous things I've ever witnessed in football. On the rare occasion that happens, the physics to it are quite easy when you think about it, But what I would say, why I think it's quite a good idea to just wave play on if a ball goes out and it comes back on, I would urge all your viewers today, Peter, to go to the aforementioned YouTube and look up some of the Alec Hurricane Higgins clips. And in one of the great clips, he finishes a break on the black. He's going out for one of the natural black pockets. He hammers it. It bounces up out of that pocket, rolls along the table, right, along the cushion, and drops into the middle bag. And it stunned the audience at the time, but it was perfectly legal. And the 7 points counted as part of the break. So if we can do that in snooker, I'm not saying we should take everything from snooker, but if that is legal, then if the boss swerves out and comes back in, just play on, And I'd also go as far as, you see it quite a lot, I've seen it loads of times at Fir Park, if the ball gets scudded up maybe against the upper level of one of the stands, and rather than going right clean over and into the car park, if it hits a bit of the kind of the guttering run about the stand and comes back onto the pitch, play on. It's a wee something added for when the fans come back. It gives that wee extra buzzy excitement. Be great.
Well, I'm glad you said that, Tom, because of the school that I attended right next to Fir Park, when the ball went out of play, we were off with the £65 mitre in our bag and away as far as we possibly could from Fir Park, to be honest with you. Anyway, VAR in operation tonight, Roughie. Let's hope it doesn't go against us.
No, I always think the VAR helps the attacking team more than the home team, who are going to be attacking more than the other team. So let's hope we get more instances in their box than they have in ours.
Yeah. Okay, last bit of news just come in, and this is why I love this programme. Hibs defender Paul McGinn is set to be drafted into the Scotland squad. Steve Clarke is looking to bolster the group after losing 6 key men to COVID and injury as well. So he's the oldest brother of John, as you'll know. So he's a right back, but he won't be involved in tonight's clash. This is the one time when I always love the fact that we can all say we. Come on, Scotland. Thanks to everyone who contributed to... What?
Can we hurry up and finish to see if Stevie can go and check his phone for texts?
Yeah, just to see if he's got the team. You got the team yet, Stevie? Have you got the team yet, Stevie? No.
I haven't, no.
Yeah, brilliant. Listen, like, share and follow us if you can on our Facebook. You can subscribe to our YouTube channel. Thank you very much to all the thoroughly decent football fans who love the programme and contribute with positive stuff, negative stuff, but again, it's not in any way derogatory or abusive. We love the fact that you're part of this football family. Thanks to Tam, Stevie, Roughie and myself, Peter Martin. Thanks to you for watching.
Expect the best used car deals guaranteed. Visit Arnold, Clarke